Hey, what's up guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Philips 328P6AUBREB. That's a mouthful. Now this is a 31.5 inch QHD IPS display that has HDR enabled as well. Now before going to the specs and just listing them down for you guys, I want to mention that this monitor costs around £440 in the UK. I will be sure to link down in the description below where you can buy it from, but at the moment I don't have any buy links at the time of making this video. So specs wise, you're wondering, okay, what does it have? Now for £440 you'd be surprised. It's got HDR, it's got pre-calibration to Adobe RGB and sRGB. It has an IPS panel that runs on with 10-bit colors, as long as you've got the GPU, which you should in order to output that. It has USB 3.1 Type-C, which also transfers data alongside an image. Therefore, you can connect up like a MacBook Pro and then have it display on this massive monitor. You've also got a Ethernet cable port at the back. You've got DisplayPort 1.2, HDMI 2.0, VGA. For some reason it's there, and audio in and out via 3.5mm jacks. In terms of audio wise, you've also got two 3-watt speakers, which are actually quite powerful and pretty decent for a monitor. Given the size, it's no surprise that they're a little bit better over a small, I don't know, 21 to 24 inch monitor. In terms of its adjustability, you can change the stand. I don't know why you would, because it's a fantastic stand made by Philips. But if you wish to change the stand, it's got VESA 100x100 at the back. Therefore, you can just quickly change it to any sort of stand that you might have, or in terms of a wall bracket. In other specs, it's got a response time, a quoted response time of 4 milliseconds G to G. It runs at 1440p at 60 Hz. It has a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it is HDR10 compliant. Therefore, if you've got HDR10 content, you can view it. However, one important thing to note is that you should be using HDMI 2.0 in order to output HDR. Now, I'll show you in a second, simply because if you're using USB Type-C, VGA for some reason, or DisplayPort, then you won't be able to view HDR on this specific monitor, which kind of defeats the point of buying a HDR specific monitor. So now, those are the specs. I know it's been absolutely long in order to start the video, but it's very important for me to list it down. So first, let's talk about the build quality of the monitor. Now the stand of it is fantastic. It's very, very sturdy, provides you full control, so you can pivot the monitor if you so wish. The bezels are relatively thin. They're not three-side borderless, but they're relatively thin and are not too distracting. The Philips logo at the bottom looks nice and gives it like a professional look. One thing I wasn't a fan is the touchscreen OSD controls on the monitor. I just don't like touch buttons. I can't stress how much I hate them, but nevertheless they're there, so you're gonna have to live with it. One thing I do like, however, is the on-screen display. Now the on-screen display has been a little bit revamped from other Philips or AOC monitors out there, and I must say I'm quite impressed with what Philips have done. They've just kind of brushed up the OSD a little bit and just made it a little bit sleeker looking. So you've got low blue light mode that you can enable. In terms of inputs that I talked about before, picture quality, so here you can enable or disable HDR. Obviously it's on auto at the moment, so it'll automatically pick it up. Brightness on 100, it does get very bright, and I'll get into that in just a bit. Smart response, now I must say, in terms of gaming wise, I was very impressed in the small amount of ghosting or overshoot that was occurring with smart response even on the fastest setting. Again, I'll talk about that in just a bit. Pixel orbiting, gamma and smart contrast. In terms of audio controls, as I said, you've got speakers on this monitor. In terms of colors, as you can see, I've selected sRGB. You've got color temperature that you can also go into, and Adobe RGB. And user defined, I found the green was just a little bit high, so I put it to 98. But anyway, that's for you guys to decide, and you can see all the color options over here. Then other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory. You got language, OSD settings, and setup, where you can also enable USB fast charging if you were to plug in a smartphone. So in terms of the HDR functions, as you can see, this is Windows 10, and it's picking up the native resolution, which is 1440p, and it has the HDR switch on. Now if I were to switch this on, you might be able to see that my whole Windows screen has gone completely off color and looks really odd. Now this is normal on Windows 10, at least what I've found from other HDR monitors, and I must say it's something that's still a work in progress, but that just proves that HDR is working. So that's great, and I have no complaints there. So yes, it is a HDR monitor and does work. As I said, that option will not show up if you have USB Type-C or a DisplayPort connected. So just bear that in mind before you jump to conclusions that you haven't got a HDR. Of course, you'll want to make sure that you have got a proper GPU that can output 1440p at 60 Hz and has the right connections like HDMI 2.0 or DisplayPort 1.2. You need HDMI 2.0. Now, in terms of the color accuracy of the monitor, it's very nice. It's an IPS panel, so you've got relatively good contrast ratios, obviously a lot better than TN panels, and the color accuracy looks good. Colors pop, there's plenty of life. Blacks are black, white points are quite good too. However, it's not quite fantastic. And the reason I say that is because if you're looking dead onto the monitor, due to the screen size, what I notice is a trail off in terms of its brightness uniformity on the edges. Now I thought maybe this could be my eyes, it could be just the fact that it's the panel or something, and then I put it to through a calibrator to see how it would do. Now you'll be able to see over here that the uniformity check that I did over here, that it is pretty much what I saw with my eyes. At the corners, you've got a variance of about -18 to about -20% in terms of what the uniformity, the brightness uniformity should be. So unfortunately, if you're going to be photo editing or video editing, and you say drag things over here, like 4 sides, which a lot of people might do, or even 2 sides, you'll find that the colors on the sides aren't as accurate as what you find in the middle, which is a shame, because if you want to be editing stuff, or even if you're just viewing like a movie or something, you'll notice a little bit of off color on the sides, and that's to do with the brightness uniformity coming through. However, in terms of color accuracy, I was extremely impressed. In terms of it running at sRGB, it had an average delta of 1.07 with a maximum delta of 2.51, which is extremely impressive for a consumer grade monitor. So if you're going to be looking to edit in sRGB, you can definitely use this. In terms of the overall luminance, it gets to around 500 CDM2, which is fantastic. In terms of the black luminance, not as great at 0.39, but still impressive nonetheless. Contrast ratio just under 1300 to 1, which is normal for an IPS screen. I put this on Adobe RGB as well, just to test how it would compare to an Adobe RGB, and this is a 1998 profile, and again it performed amazingly with a 0.92 average delta E and a maximum average delta E of 2.12. Again, sensational for a consumer grade monitor. Very rarely do you see such results, and so it's again very impressive. Similar contrast ratio and black luminance, and the overall brightness at Adobe RGB as well. So overall, in terms of color wise, I don't have any complaints. It's just that if you're looking at the monitor bang on, you will notice a drop off on the sides, and it is noticeable in some scenes like this, which are dark scenes, and then you notice like a trail off on the corners. Something to bear in mind if you're going to be getting this monitor for what I would say its purpose is, for editing or viewing pictures and whatnot. Now, in terms of HDR, I had no problem actually using HDR. So just launching up Shadow Warrior 2, which was my test bench, thanks to Samsung, who actually provided this for me to actually test with. But again, HDR works, as you can see, enabling it over here in Shadow Warrior 2. I felt that yes, the colors are a little bit weird. They look a bit different. However, that's what it is. That's how HDR works. It's how the game developer has has a perception of HDR and how they want the game to look like in a HDR mode. So just bear that in mind. So in this scene, for example, you can see that the HDR looks very accurate, it looks very beautiful, and everything is just pretty level, so to speak. But when it comes to actually using it on a daily basis, I actually kind of prefer the SDR version in some respects, which is not something that most people would agree with. It's just because I'm just used to a little bit more bright colors, which just make the scene look a little bit better. So over here with HDR, you can see the background, you can see the skyline. If I were to remove HDR, however, then you will no longer see that skyline. You'll kind of see it overblown out. But colors over here, to me, look a little bit washed out. Now, if I were to disable HDR, increase the gamma, which is what you should be doing if you're going to be playing this game, you will be able to see that colors look a lot more vibrant, but they're less accurate, and as you can see, the sky is a little bit overblown out. So HDR has its benefits. It's still, in my opinion, a little bit primitive at stages, but nevertheless it does work, so I have no sort of complaints with HDR. It is just a work in progress, and at this stage a lot of manufacturers are starting to use HDR in their monitors, and therefore if game developers start using it more, content such as Netflix and whatever also utilize it as well, then we're gonna start to see HDR move on a little bit more. So in all honesty, yes, it works. Is it something I would actually get for in terms of HDR? It's not something I would see myself actually buying myself. However, as in the HDR standard for a Windows desktop. However, it is there for you guys to use. Now, in terms of the overall monitor, what do I think of it? Well, for 31.5-inch 1440p HDR USB Type-C enabled if you want to use it, a good color accurate display that runs Adobe RGB and sRGB and costs around £440. I think this monitor is fantastic value for money. Of course, it is a little bit more expensive than your average non-HDR or non-USB Type-C monitor, but you are paying a premium for a reason. Now, again, I can't stress it enough, if you're a video or photo editor, this will be a budget option for you guys. However, as I said, at the top extremities or bottom extremities of the monitor, you're not going to get a good brightness uniformity, and therefore it might impact your work if you're going to be using it for work purposes. Overall, it is a good monitor. It's not perfect, it's not mind-blowingly amazing, but it's a good, solid monitor, which I would see myself recommending. So there we go, guys. This has been my in-depth review of this monitor. If you've liked this review, make sure you give it a like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think about this monitor as well. Favorite and share if you feel that it will help any friends or family with their purchasing decisions. And there we go. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.